Right, so we're ready to make a start. I just want to say good morning. My name is Liz Smith and I'm Director of Participation and Learning here at the Gallery. Welcome. So particularly well done for getting here on a Monday morning to join the Picture the Poet conference. There's lots of familiar faces, which is great to see. Just a little bit about the event I thought would be interesting by way of context. The event has been commissioned by the National Portrait Gallery, working with Engage at the end of what's been an incredibly, I think, exciting, if not tiring, but really kind of wonderful project journey over the last 3 years. The intention of today is to kind of look at the experiences that we've had along the way, and in your programme you'll see that there's quite a lot of contributions, so we're going to be really kind of working hard to keep on time. So it's a packed programme, hopefully lots of points of interest and connection with your own practice and lots that you can bring to the discussions. But before we kind of move into some of the more usual housekeeping, I just wanted to pass to Jane Sillis, who's Director of Engage, to say a little bit more about why we think this event is pertinent and timely.
Thank you, Liz, and good morning, everybody. I really just wanted to say a few things about Engage's involvement in today's event. It feels very timely to be having this discussion today. I'm sure, as you all know, art and design is really under pressure within formal education, and there's a huge focus around literacy. So it's brilliant to be discussing a project which has really looked at how creative writing and the performing word can be used in conjunction with visual literacy and with artworks. It's been great working with colleagues who've been involved in the Picture the Poet project, particularly the National Portrait Gallery, the National Literacy Trust and Apples and Snakes, to really develop the themes that we're going to be focusing on today. And Liz, but also her colleague at the gallery, Laura Down, spent some time talking to Engage Council, who represent Engage members and so colleagues working in the visual arts education sector, about the best way to explore some of the learning from this amazing project. And so the two themes which sort of underpin, I think, today are really how sustainable partnerships can be built and what kind of legacies arrive from those, but also, really, as I was saying earlier, how creative writing can really grow out of that sort of visual stimulus from contact with the visual arts. It's great that the event is being recorded. It means that what happens today can be shared much more widely, and we think that's really important. And as Engage, we're really excited because we think we're going to learn lots from the experience of being involved in this conference and in Picture the Poet. And that will inform a creative writing programme. We won the Max Reinhardt Literacy Award, which will be running for the second time and announcing this summer. So I just wanted to say a big thank you to everyone who's been involved in today's conference, all the Picture the Poet partners, and particularly to Penny Jones, who's helped coordinate today.
So I think we'll move on to the morning session. So I'd like to invite Jonathan Douglas, who's I think I got this right, Director of the National Literacy Trust, and he's going to open the morning session for us. Jonathan, thank you.
Good morning, everybody. It's fantastic to be here because this work is so very, very important, and because also today is a historic moment. Believe it or not, you're seeing reassembled for the first time in the same place for 18 years, the dream team of 1998. Liz Smith, myself and Ian Macmillan worked on a programme at the London Transport Museum in 1990. It was a fantastic programme, bringing poetry to the internet. In those days, the internet was a new idea. A year before I had qualified as a librarian, and as part of my qualification, I had to demonstrate the internet using paper cups and string. So it was a new and cutting-edge thing, and here we are, still looking as useful as ever, and still banging on about the same old stuff. So it's fantastic to be here, absolutely fantastic to be here. The National Literacy Trust, a charity working with a focus on the relationship between poverty and literacy. We know that in the United Kingdom, poverty is more strongly related to literacy than in any other developed country, and we want to do something about that. What I want to do is basically give you three things which I think sit behind our involvement in this project and which I hope you'll be able to bear in mind for the rest of the day. The first thing is this. Literacy isn't just about minds, it's about hearts as well. Now, in 1998, when we did that fantastic project at the London Transport Museum, we were a bit of a resistance movement. Those of you who were in schools at the time will remember it was the time of the National Literacy Strategy. And there was a big push in schools to raise literacy levels in the most extraordinarily focused way. And it worked. But that same group of kids who, over that 7-year period between 1998 and 2005, that cohort of kids who got better and better literacy levels, actually, what we observed through other pieces of research was that they stopped enjoying reading. Now, that in itself is a shame, but actually its results are crippling because that cohort of kids have now left secondary school, and recent research has shown that actually their literacy levels, even though they were doing better at the primary stage, by the time they left secondary school, were a lot weaker. And that's because at that point, the hearts and minds things had become pulled apart. And really, what sits behind this project is an ability and a desire to put together the fact that if you're going to learn to read, if you're going to learn to write, if you're going to actually engage in poetry as a fundamental expression of your thoughts and of your beliefs, then actually you need to enjoy it as well as to be able. So the first thing is hearts and minds. The second thing, which is very, very important, is granularity. We've recently been thinking about where we need to put our efforts at the National Literacy Trust. If you look at a map, a heat-seeking map of literacy of the levels in the United Kingdom, it gets very, very, very granular. And it's always been like that. In fact, even in 1998, when I was a librarian, I had 2 libraries, one on one side of the Marylebone Road, which was the most affluent library in Westminster, in fact, the most affluent borough in the central London, with the highest levels of literacy. Then you cross the road and you hit the Church Street Estate, which is where my second library was. And on the Church Street Estate, we had the lowest levels of literacy in central London. And actually, life expectancy shifted by 12 years when you cross the road. And that granularity, that fact that actually different communities have got different levels of literacy, is really, really significant. And one of the key things we want to do is get out to those communities and make sure that actually we're not just working in those marvellous creative centres like this place, but actually we're spreading the word and the work out nationally. The third thing that I think is important in terms of sitting behind today is some research which is perhaps the least known research, but is the most startling research around literacy in the UK. And this piece of research has been recurring in our research. The National Literacy Trust does a big piece of research each year with 35,000 young people. It's been recurring every year in our research for the past decade, but it's appeared in lots of other pieces of research as well. And that is this. Across the board, kids on free school meals are sadly less likely to read and write in their own time. They're less likely to read fiction, less likely to write fiction, less likely to read non-fiction. But there is one format where that tendency is reversed, and that is poetry. Kids from poorer backgrounds are more likely to read and write poetry in their own time than kids from more affluent backgrounds. So tomorrow we're publishing some new research. Nationally, the figures this year are that 23% of children on free school meals read poetry in their own time, as opposed to only 15% of kids not on free school meals. And 20% of kids on free school meals write poetry in their own time, as opposed to only 13% of kids not on free school meals. So poorer kids get more into poetry and actually lock into it. Now, that, for those of us who have worked on the front line in schools and libraries, that feels true, but is somehow also a bit counterintuitive. But it's a truth also which has sat behind a lot of our work in prisons, where we've taken poets and that kind of thing as well. So those 3 things, the fact that actually, first of all, hearts and minds need to be engaged in terms of literacy. Secondly, that actually that kind of granular pattern of literacy levels across the country. And thirdly, the fact that poetry is innately attractive and exciting to the very kids we most want to work with. Those 3 things meant that it was virtually impossible not to do this project. So taking a touring exhibition, working with the National Portrait Gallery on a programme which actually thrilled young people in those communities with poetry, we knew was too good. So those 3 concepts, the 3 things I hope that sits at the back of your mind. Now, I've exhausted my 5 minutes. A card's being waved at me. So I will hand over to the 3rd member of the dream team of 98, Ian McMillan. All of you will know him from Radio 1, Radio 2, Radio 3, Radio 4, Radio 5. In fact, they've run out of radio stations for Ian. He is a poetry phenomenon. He has taken poetry to the very places which we're most passionate about, whether it's Barnsley Football Club, whether it's Northern Spirit Trains, whether it's Humberside Police. He's been there with poetry. He's a champion for the word and the verb. Welcome, Ian McMillan.
Yes, I remember that event in 1998 with Jonathan and Liz, and they said we must work together again as soon as possible. So here we are, which is great. There are two main reasons I was so excited to be involved with Picture the Poet. The first reason was that my grandson, who's now 11, when he was 2, I said to him, right, we're going to go to an art gallery. And he was so excited that he wet himself. And I thought, that is what we want. We don't actually want the physical wetting of the cell, but we want a kind of spiritual incontinence of excitement when we go to art galleries. And he loved it. And at the moment, my grandson's 11, and he's suffering under the terrible, terrible yoke of SATs, which is an appalling thing. And in his school in Granthorpe, which isn't a bad school, the teachers are so frightened that since September, they've been studying SATs papers, past SATs papers. And let me tell you, there's no incontinence of excitement with him now. So that's the great thing about Picture the Poet. It's about that excitement. I also wanted to recapture the kind of excitement that I had when we were at school. And they said, right, we're going to go on a school trip to Gould Docks, which was so exciting. I can't tell you how exciting it was. We got the bus to Gould Docks, and we spent an entire day wandering round Gould Docks. We made poems, we made songs, we made images, we made a little play that we then came back and performed to the people of the rest of the school. And that was the kind of excitement that we were after with Picture the Poet. So for me, the project was about glee and delight and happiness. And also it was about trying to capture, I remember years ago doing an event at Rotherham Library. And what always happens, as you know, when you do this kind of event, there'll be two different kinds of schools that come. There'll be the ones that come ridiculously early and the ones that come ridiculously late. And the ones who come ridiculously early always go, we didn't think it would take this long, or we thought it would take more time to walk to the school than to walk to the gallery. They're lying. The ones who come ridiculously late, they always turn up hours and hours late. And I was doing this event in Rotherham, and there were two schools meant to be coming. And the first school turned up on time, and they said, we'll just wait for the second school. So we're sitting there waiting for the second school. They didn't turn up. We rang them up. They said, oh, they've set off, they won't be long. So we sat and waited. We waited. We waited for ages. We then rang them up again. They said, we turned up at the library, Ian McMillan hasn't come, we've gone back to the school. What had happened was, they turned up at a library that had shut down 5 years before and was now a carpet warehouse. And they stood outside this library, looked at rolls of carpet and thought, well, but to me, what they should have done, if they had any imagination, was to stand outside that carpet warehouse and make poems about the carpet warehouse and do things about the carpet warehouse. We know what an interesting and exciting visual thing a carpet warehouse is. And they should have come back and made poems about the carpet warehouse, which they didn't. They didn't have enough gumption. So what was exciting for me about Picture the Poet was just to get a sense of excitement. I wanted this kind of incontinence of excitement. I wanted people, again, not to wet themselves, but to sort of wet themselves in actually probably yes to wet themselves, but to wet themselves in an excitable way. So we did lots of different venues. The young people would come in. Some of them were familiar with their museum or art gallery, some weren't. It was always a sense of wonder. They walked in, they saw these pictures of poets. Most of them, as you can see, they're taken at least 20 years ago, and they look much, much different now. Kate Tempest looks about the same. The rest of them, Sean O'Brien, that looks like a young Sean O'Brien. The picture of me is a picture of me looking quite quizzical, but I'm actually also looking frightened to death because the photographer had climbed up a tree to take me photograph, and I knew and he didn't that the tree branch was quite fragile. So I knew that it was about, and he didn't actually fall off, but he was about to. And so what we did was, my experience of Picture the Poet was to get these young people in and we just made something up. I don't like it when people have a plan. Plans always go wrong, I find. If you have a plan, you go, well, I finished the plan and it's only 10 to. Or, I'm only halfway through the plan and it's only 20 to. You know, so I think we should rely as writers, as teachers, as people who work in museums and galleries on the fact that we've been around for a while and that we can play with these rooms. At Preston, the Harris Gallery Preston, the fantastic, wonderful, wonderful gallery. We went in, and there was actually a loose thing on the wall. There was a loose thing. We made up this fantastic thing about the loose thing on the wall. The loose thing on the wall. The kids got so excited about the loose thing on the wall. I've never seen kids so excited about a look, but we related it to the pictures. We went round with all the pictures. I did a very simple thing. I said, look at these pictures. Let's imagine what's about to happen. Something's about to happen. I told them about my picture where the fellow was about to fall out the tree. I said, look, something's about to happen. So with Sean O'Brien, they imagined that maybe the bookshelves were going to crowd in and crush him. With Kate Tempest, Kate looked so sad. They're all thinking Kate looked sad. Somebody thought she'd had something stolen. We wondered why Paul Farley was sitting in that cafe looking out, looking like an Edward Hopper print. Why is he looking so sad? Well, then we always imagined something happening beyond that. So they recreated the image for us. We weren't just presented with an image and they had to respond to it. They recreated the image for us. They finished off the image for us. And then they all performed something for us at the end. So somehow then we related the image to this thing, the loose thing on the wall, the strange thing on the wall. And it made the room that they'd gone into, there was a room in a gallery, so it's bound to be magical anyway. It made it even more magical because by being there, they'd made it more magical. They'd written things down, they'd recreated it. And then we performed them to each other. And I always like to, when we perform stuff with children, I never like it when they whoop and cheer. I always like them to do the children's equivalent of the that we always get in a poem. So I got them all to go which kind of seemed to help. So we're going to recreate that today. We're not going to find things on the wall, but at my last session this afternoon, we're all going to make up an interactive epic about the day using my favourite implement, the flip chart, because I don't like PowerPoint because it either breaks down or you have to watch it upside down, as happened to me at a conference the other day. But I think with a flip chart, you just stand there, and so we're going to make something up with the flip chart. We're going to make up an interactive epic about Picture the Poet. Yes, I can see that's excited you, and that's what we're going to do. We're going to make up an interactive epic about Picture the Poet. So as the day is going on, have a look round, think about things. This is an interesting room in that kind of way. We're going to make something about this amazing room and about the Picture the Poet and about the fact that we're here. And then save your letters of invitation, because in years to come, people will pretend they were here who weren't. They'll say, we were here that day. They made up the interactive thing about Picture the Poet, and we certainly will be. I'm going to finish 23 seconds earlier because I'm a professional.